Good morning from a beautiful sunny Friday in Key West. Just to give you a bit of an update from yesterday. So we got off the ship pretty quickly. We decided to do a self-exit, which means you keep your luggage with you and you can actually leave anytime you want. So it was really quick and we didn't have to wait for our baggage. And a really quick tip here, if you are leaving on whatever time on the debarkation day, the elevators get really busy, so obviously everyone's trying to go down. So if you click on the up button, then the elevator will pick you up on the way up, which means it's normally empty, and then you can just press the down button to the floor you want to go to, and that way you can guarantee you're going to get on the elevator. So anyway, we checked out really quickly. We grabbed an Uber. Obviously there were a lot of people waiting for taxis and Ubers, but we only had to wait about 7 minutes for an Uber XL because we had a lot of luggage, and we then tootled off to our car rental depot. And when we got there, we had a big old fiasco, and there's a lesson here, which is never book a rental car through a company you've never heard of before, because we had booked our car through Discover Cars, which is like a clearinghouse, and we had taken out Discover Cars insurance rather than the car rental cars insurance. And they told us, the car rental company told us, that we had to pay an extra $300 fee to not take their insurance. So it's a complete rip-off. Total cost of the car rental should have been about £170 for 5 days, including Discover Cars insurance. In the end, it cost me over £500, and I've had to put a claim against this car rental company with Discover Cars, because obviously it wasn't anywhere in the terms and conditions that if we didn't take their insurance we would have to pay an admin fee, whatever that means. Anyway, so we got the car, and then because James's flight wasn't until 3 o'clock, we drove to Sawgrass Mills, and that is a huge shopping mall. And James wanted to buy some Levi's, he wanted to buy some Bose headphones, and he also wanted to buy some eye cream, and we managed to find all three of those things in this shopping mall. We could have spent hours there. As it was, we spent probably an hour and a half. Then I drove James back to the airport and dropped him off at the airport, said our sad goodbyes as he headed back home to England, and then I started my long trek towards Key West. It should have taken about 4 hours, but there were obviously some traffic, so my sat-nav took me on a rather convoluted route off the main freeway through bypassing Miami, I guess, and then joining up at the start of Highway 1 South, which takes you on the long road to Key West. Now most of this is a single track road, so obviously if there's an accident or you get stuck behind a very slow moving vehicle, you're just going to have to be patient. The views are beautiful, but by 4 o'clock I had arrived at my hotel, which is where I'm filming this, the West Winds Inn. So it took me about 4 hours in the end, so it wasn't bad at all. And checked into the inn, and you could pay $35 parking in the local garage, or you could try and find off-street parking. So having spent so much money today, I decided to try and find off-street parking, which I did actually find really easily. And in any non-permit parking space you can park for up to 72 hours, which will cover me for my whole time here. So here we are at the West Winds Inn, and I'll just show you around the resort. I'll do a full room review later, but it is really pretty here, and it's still fairly early in the morning, so it's not a morning place. In fact, it's really interesting that sunset isn't till about 7 o'clock and sunrise isn't till about 8 o'clock. So I was up at 7 this morning and it was still dark, but I had the whole place to myself. At the moment it's 10 o'clock and it still feels like I've got the whole place to myself. I'll show you the room later, but if you stay here, because of during COVID they stopped doing breakfast here, so they give you a voucher for the local bakery, which is really lovely. It's literally 100 yards up the road, and you get a $5 voucher and you can get a croissant and a coffee. And I went there this morning early and there was no one there, but I just walked past it just now because I needed to go back to my car to get some paperwork, and there was a massive line outside of the shop. So anyway, like I say, I'll do a full tour of the hotel later on, but right now I am going to walk into Key West, so I'll take you with me. Literally 8 to 10 minutes walk, and it brings you straight down Eaton Street, which is the road that the hotel's on, brings you to Duval Street, which is the street I'm on now. And I'm sure you know that Duval Street is the main shopping street with some definitely quirky buildings, like this pub that's bar that's covered in dollar bills, and this lovely old well, it used to be a cinema or something like that, but looks like a shop now, and lots of sort of Art Deco colonial type buildings, and it's just a lovely place to go for a wander. I'm not really looking to buy anything particularly. You can imagine that given that this is such a touristy trap area, that things are pretty expensive here. So, but it is definitely a nice place just to go for a wander. Lots of knick-knack shops, as well as chemists, pharmacies, coffee shops, pubs, bars, places to eat. Now I'm here on my own for the weekend, and it doesn't feel too much of a strange place to be on my own. I'm not really looking to do any big tours. Like, obviously you can go out on boats, and it is a beautiful day for it. It's baking hot and a little bit of a breeze, but I've done all my touristy things on the cruise, so I'm now just here to relax for a few days, get my head back into work. I've actually done a couple of hours work this morning, and just chill out before I head back to Fort Lauderdale in a couple of days' time to set up home for the next 2 weeks in my Airbnb. Such a nice place just to wander around, and there's different ways of getting around. Walking, you can jump on the hop on, hop off bus, which takes you all over the place, which would be a good thing to do. I might do that tomorrow. Or you can even grab one of these carts and rent the cart for a day or two, and it's not that expensive, about $35-40, but it really is very nice just to wander around. And of course you're going to find all the key lime pie shops everywhere, because that's where it was invented. But don't tell anyone, I'm not a big fan of key lime pie, so I won't be trying that. But anyway, they definitely take Halloween extremely seriously here, so that is a pretty impressive Halloween display. Good morning. And yeah, all the hotels seem to be competing. Mine seems to be just in the process of putting all of their Halloween display in place, as there's some more of it. I noticed this morning. I think we're sort of coming towards the end of the street, but here you can see the place where you can rent a scooter or one of these golf buggies for a day or a few hours. And if you wander all the way down Duval Street, which is what I've done, it brings you down to the sea. So yeah, I've walked the complete length of Duval Street, which isn't that far, but it is hot, so you don't want to be in any kind of rush to get anywhere. But it brings you to this lovely cafe, the Southernmost Beach Cafe, and down to another hotel, I'm not sure which one that is, and down to the sea. You can see the tide, squeeze past here, the tide is pretty high at the moment, and I must say the water doesn't particularly look like water that you want to swim in. It looks a bit like the water we see in the UK, rather brown. That's probably from all the seaweed. But here we are at the Key West Marine Park, and I guess we are somewhere around here. That's walking the complete length of Duval Street, and there are some lovely hotels here. I am sure these are not cheap. The hotel I'm staying in is a good $250 tonight, and it's a 2 or 3 star hotel. It's perfectly fine. The beds are comfortable, the air conditioning is good, the Wi-Fi works, there's a pool, so there's not much more you could ask, and it's very close to the centre of Key West, which of course is why you're going to pay a premium. So I can't imagine what the price of these places are, but I imagine it's really expensive. Wow, that's amazing. That is the queue for people to take a picture by this landmark of the southernmost point, and it's worth knowing that it is pretty quiet here today. It's Friday, it's in October, it's in the off season. There's a big festival coming up, so people will be here for that, so they're probably not here at the moment, and yet there's still an awful long queue of people just to take a picture there. So it's showing that the southernmost point of continental USA, and we are 90 miles from Cuba. Let's prove that I was actually here. Here's another way of getting round on the conch train, which is quite a fun thing to do. So I have come down to Mallory Square. I actually came down here last night, but I was here a bit early before sunset, but it certainly wasn't as crowded as it is right now. This is the place where everyone comes to watch the sunset, and you can sort of see why, because it's a beautiful day, so it's going to be a lovely sunset this evening. So I'm going to hang around and hopefully capture it to show you guys. It's definitely a great vibe here. There's lots of people busking and various stalls to buy hot dogs and drinks, as well as craft stalls over there. And of course, if you're staying in one of these hotels, you're going to have an amazing sunset every night. You don't need to stand with the crowds to get the great views. How about being on one of these tiki bars, go out and enjoy the sunset and get drunk at the same time? So I've tried to do a time lapse, so we'll see how that goes, but look how many people are here now. Everyone's trying to capture it on their cameras. So it's Saturday today, and I've come back down to Duval Street. I'm walking from one end to the other. So at the far end here you can see the sea, and that's near where Mallory Square is, where everyone watches the sunset, which hopefully you watched with me last night. And then you can walk up, and it's dissected by Eaton Street, which is the street that my hotel is on. And at this end of Eaton Street there's more of the, well, I guess it's a mixture really, but there's bars further up, there's lots of boutique shops and whatnot shops, as James would say. And it's interesting, though it's busy today, it's apparently still the off season, and I don't believe there's been any cruise ships in since I've been here. So if this is the off season, you can see it's pretty busy today. Imagine what it's like when we're in the season and indeed there's a cruise ship here. It must be super crowded, and I guess one big advantage of cruise ships coming in is that they'll dock right into the centre of Key West, so you don't have to travel anymore. I assume so anyway. I'm not quite sure where they dock, but anyway, you can see lots of people drinking Saturday afternoon and getting into the party spirit, and the place definitely comes alive once the sun has gone down, which, as you know, is sort of around just after 7 o'clock. So I'm going to walk from one end right to the other end of Duval Street, and you can definitely see that there's different areas. This is definitely the sort of drinking, sports bar type of area with different bars for everybody really. So little bars, places you can get pizza. There's an Irish bar on the other side of the road if that tickles your fancy. And some of the well-known bars up ahead here. I'll get back to you when I get to the crossing of where my hotel is, and you'll see we'll cross over to the other side of the street. Can't tell you how lucky I have been with the weather. It's another beautiful day today in the high 80s. See a few clouds in the sky. Tomorrow it's supposed to be more rainy and more thunderstorms. So we'll see if they materialise and how that impacts my drive back to Fort Lauderdale. So this first part of Duval Street after you've crossed over Eaton Road feels a little bit more upmarket with more sort of wine bars, some hotels. There's even a Starbucks up here. I discovered my new favourite drink, which is cold brew vanilla cream, which is only 70 calories and it's really nice. So I shall be drinking more of that in my next few weeks once I get back to Fort Lauderdale. And you come a bit further down Duval Street and you kind of come into the gay area where there are gay bars and I think some gay bread and breakfast and some drag queens over there. Of course you're going to see lots of cigar shops. And as I've been saying, they take Halloween very seriously in, well, America, but certainly in Key West. Just thought I'd show you this price list because it is very typical of the costs of things like a drink here. Actually, in happy hours, $6 for a drink is pretty decent. But I've taken you from one end of Duval Street to the other. This is where I had a smoothie yesterday, and you can see the beach resort we saw yesterday and the sea is just up ahead. So we've literally walked from one end of Duval Street to the other, and it feels to me like there's sort of 3 or 4 distinct vibes from the restaurants right near Eaton Road where my hotel is, to when you come down the first part of this, you come to the sort of swanky little boutiques and the branded name shops, and then you hit the gay area, and then you just come to a much quieter area here. And then when you go in the other direction, you see all of the bars and restaurants and the sort of party town. I guess it's all around the centre really, around Mallory Square. So there we go, that is Key West. I really recommend coming here for a weekend. It's definitely not the cheapest place to come, but it's worth it in terms of just, it's got a really nice laid back vibe to it, and obviously amazing weather when there's not a hurricane. It's interesting, like I said, I was fortunate with the weather, but you can see the remnants of any damage that Hurricane Ian did, where there are a lot of palm leaves on the ground that people are sweeping up and other debris. But we've been really lucky on the whole trip that we avoided Hurricane Ian, both at the beginning on Fort Lauderdale, and the cruise went in the opposite direction to the way the hurricane was coming, so that didn't affect us, and obviously it's gone now, and so it hasn't affected us in Key West. But obviously people often recommend that you take out hurricane insurance, because if you have to cancel your Key West holiday because there's a hurricane warning, then you're obviously going to lose a lot of money if you don't have any insurance. Now, I didn't take out insurance, but that seems something that a lot of people recommend, and I can sort of see why. I just kept a good eye on the weather, and I've been fortunate, I guess. Anyway, so I highly recommend a weekend in Key West. If you're going to drive, it's about a 4-hour drive from Fort Lauderdale. You come down to Miami, and then you hit Highway 1 South all the way through all the various keys from Key Largo, the first key, to Key West being the last key. And it's a really enjoyable drive. You can't be in a rush because most of it's a single track road, but it's definitely worth it. So if you're coming to Fort Lauderdale or you're doing a cruise, then do think about adding on a few days to come to Key West.